Just to give a bit of background to the Greek pottery collection in Reading Museum, the museum opened its doors to the public in 1883, and the aim then was to try and give the people of Reading an idea of different cultures, different objects of artistic and archaeological interest. This was in the days where there was no television. People didn't always take their own newspapers. In fact, the room in which we're filming was the old newspaper reading room, where people came in to read the papers on wooden stands. Horatio Bland, who was a major collector, had his own little museum in Burfield, and he died in 1876, and his executors offered his collection to Reading Borough Council, which then was the Borough of Reading. The collection actually came to the museum in 1882 and came into a purpose-built town hall, extension, museum and library. And this pot beside me here was one of the 19 Greek pots that was part of the Bland collection. A lot of these pots have got a stamp on the base saying Bland Coal, and so we've been able to identify which particular items were his. Subsequently, there were a number of other collections came into the museum from interested and educated, fairly wealthy local collectors who wanted people to have the advantage of seeing these objects and increasing their own practical education. And our ledgers, which the museum kept from the time it opened, give a history of some of these collectors and their collections that came into the museum.
So as Jill was mentioning, this is one of the original registers for the Reading Museum collection. And as we can see here, this is the page where Horatio Bland's collection is documented in the museum register. And as we can see, it's noted that it came in 1882, and it covers 2 pages worth of objects. And it's actually on the second page where we have the mention of the Greek pottery that came into the museum. And that was amongst a lot of other objects as well, including Egyptian pottery. There was a lot of taxidermy that came to the museum as well. And that was the starting point of the Greek pots that came into Reading Museum. But if we look also further in the register, we can see some of the other major contributors to the Reading Museum collection. So on this page here, we have the donation in 1899 from a gentleman called Lord Arthur Hill. And he donated a collection of 270 vessels as a gift to the museum. And these have been collected through Italy and Greece. And as Jill was explaining, a number of the pots that we have come from parts of what we now consider Italy, but back in the 5th century BC, they'd been considered ancient Greece. And Lord Arthur Hill, he was an MP, and the objects came to us via the British Museum, where he'd originally offered these objects as a donation, but they had decided that they didn't really want these pots, and suggested that as Reading Museum was now collecting lots of Greek pottery, it would be a very good place for him to donate material. And for us at Reading Museum, it's been quite interesting because this Lord Arthur Hill is very different from another Arthur Hill who was a very prominent local Reading noble alderman who had given us the money to, or had purchased the Bayeux tapestry that we have on display at the museum as well. And then the final collection of objects to mention is the objects from a Mr. Snare. Mr. Snare had originally lent his Greek pots to Reading Museum, and then on his death, the executors of his will had taken these pots back and had decided they were going to auction them for sale. And the very next day, Reading Museum had purchased these same pots on sale at the auction. And in this register, we still have the receipt of the pots that were purchased. And it comes complete with the signed initials of Reading Museum's first curator, Joseph Stevens.